The girl had lived alone for so long that silence had become her only companion. In the far outskirts of the northern mountains, where roads disappeared and winters swallowed sound, her small wooden house stood like an afterthought, forgotten by the world and intentionally so. She had chosen this life after people taught her what cruelty looked like when fear wore a human face. Her name was Elena, though no one had spoken it kindly in years. The villagers once whispered behind her back, then eventually to her face. Cursed girl. Witch's daughter. When illness took her parents despite her desperate attempts to save them, the blame found her easily. Stones were thrown. Doors were closed. Friends vanished overnight. So she left, choosing loneliness over hatred. That night, winter arrived early. Snow battered the roof, wind clawed at the walls, and Elena fed the fire with shaking hands. She had enough food for a week, maybe two. Enough firewood. Enough solitude. What she didn't have was fear anymore. After surviving people, storms felt harmless. Then came the knock. It wasn't loud. Not desperate. Just deliberate. Elena froze. No one came here. Ever. She grabbed the iron rod by the hearth and approached the door slowly. Another knock followed, firmer this time. Please, a man's voice said, low and controlled. I need shelter. Against every instinct she had learned the hard way, Elena opened the door a crack. The man standing there did not look ordinary. He was tall, imposing even while injured, dark hair dusted with snow, his coat torn and stained with blood. His eyes, unnaturally pale, met hers and something ancient stirred behind them. He leaned slightly against the doorframe, hiding pain behind calm control. You're hurt, she said. Yes, he replied simply. And running out of time. She should have closed the door. Instead, she stepped aside. Inside, she helped him sit near the fire, noticing how little he reacted to pain as she cleaned his wounds. The cut on his side was deep, too precise for an accident. His skin was cold. Too cold. You should be screaming, she muttered. I've learned not to, he said. She stitched his wound without anesthesia, her hand steady despite her racing heart. He watched her closely, not like a man judging but like a king observing something rare. What is your name? She asked. Adrian, he replied. Pause. That will do for now. Snow buried the road by morning. They were trapped together. And Elena didn't yet know that the man bleeding on her floor was not running from death, but from a throne soaked in blood. Nor did she know that this single act of kindness would awaken something long buried inside the vampire king. Morning came like a pale warning. The storm had emptied its fury in the night, leaving behind a world buried so deep in white that the trees looked drowned. Elena stood at the window with a mug of bitter herbal tea, staring at the vanished path to the road. Snow had swallowed everything. No tracks. No signs of life. Just silence so thick it felt like another wall. Behind her, the stranger, Adrian, lay unnaturally still on the narrow bed she dragged near the hearth. His chest rose and fell, slow and controlled as if even sleep obeyed him. Elena had spent the night in her chair, dozing in sharp fragments, waking every time the wind slammed the cabin like a fist. She told herself she was watching him out of caution, but there was something else, an unease she couldn't name. His wounds should have left him weak. Instead, he looked like a predator resting. When his eyes opened, they were alert instantly, catching her reflection in the glass. You're awake early, he said, voice rough but steady. You're awake at all, Elena replied, walking closer to check his bandages. With blood loss like that, you should be feverish. I've always healed quickly, he said. She lifted the cloth from his side. The stitches she'd sewn were clean and tight, but the skin beneath them looked too good. Too closed. Too fast. Her fingers froze. What are you? She whispered before she could stop herself. His gaze didn't flicker. A problem, he answered calmly. For some people. Elena tightened her jaw and forced her hands to move again. You're not from any village around here. Your clothes are expensive. Your injuries were not from a fall. Her eyes narrowed. Tell me the truth. Why were you bleeding on my doorstep? A long silence passed. Then he said, because someone wanted me dead. Elena stepped back slightly. Who? Adrian's mouth curved into something that wasn't a smile. The kind of people who don't believe you deserve to keep breathing once they decide you're inconvenient. The words hit her like a memory. She understood that sentence too well. She turned away, busying herself with boiling water and slicing bread. You should rest, she said, keeping her voice flat. Your leg still needs time. He shifted, wincing, just enough to look human. How long are we trapped here? Elena glanced outside. Days. Maybe more. Then I owe you, Adrian said quietly. Elena laughed once, humorless. No one owes me anything. People just leave. The air changed at that. Adrian's gaze sharpened, as if her words had struck something inside him. Who hurt you? Elena's hands paused over the kettle. Everyone, she said simply. But I'm still here. He watched her for a moment that felt too intimate, too heavy. That kind of resilience is rare. She didn't respond. Praise made her uncomfortable. Praise had always been followed by betrayal. Later that day she caught him standing. Not limping. Not leaning. Standing near the shelf of her dried herbs, reading labels in perfect Romanian. When he noticed her, he didn't look guilty. He looked amused. You said your leg was broken, Elena said, voice icy. I said it hurt, Adrian replied smoothly. You assumed broken. Elena grabbed the iron rod again. Get out. His eyes darkened, not with anger but disappointment. If I step outside, I will be found. And if you stay, she snapped, I could be killed. Adrian took one step toward her. Slow. Careful. Like approaching a frightened animal. You saved me, he said. I won't repay that by bringing danger to your home. Elena's laugh trembled this time. Danger is already here. You walked in with it. A sudden sound cut through them, footsteps crunching in the snow outside. Multiple. Heavy. Purposeful. Elena's breath stopped. Adrian turned his head slightly, as if listening to something beyond human hearing. His expression hardened into cold certainty. They're here, he said. Elena backed away. Who? Adrian's voice dropped into something ancient and lethal. The ones who hunt kings. Elena's heart hammered so hard she thought it might tear free from her chest. The footsteps outside circled the cabin slowly, deliberately, crushing snow with a confidence that chilled her more than the cold ever could. She had lived alone for years, learned every sound of the forest, every warning the wind could give. These were not hunters or lost travelers. These were men who expected obedience. Hide, Adrian said softly. Elena stared at him. You don't get to give orders in my house. A shadow of something dark, almost amused, crossed his face. Then listen, he corrected. For once. Before she could argue, the door shook under a hard knock. Not polite. Not asking. Open up, a voice called. We know you're inside. Elena's fingers curled around the iron rod. Her instinct screamed to stay silent, to vanish the way she always had. But she thought of every time she'd been blamed, chased, forced to flee. She was tired of running. She stepped forward. Adrian caught her wrist gently but firmly. His touch was cold and steady. If they see you, they will use you. And if I let them take you, she whispered. His eyes locked onto hers, silver burning. They will burn your home to the ground. The door crashed inward before either could move. 3 men entered, dressed in dark coats, weapons hidden but obvious. Their eyes swept the room, then settled on Elena. Well, one sneered. Didn't expect a woman. Another laughed. Figures he'd hide behind one. Something inside Adrian snapped. The air dropped to freezing in a heartbeat. The fire dimmed. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls. Leave, Adrian said. His voice wasn't loud. It was final. The men faltered, unease creeping into their confidence. You think you scare us? The leader said. You're wounded. Isolated. Adrian straightened to his full height. And for the first time he stopped pretending. His eyes ignited crimson silver. The wound on his side sealed before Elena's eyes. His presence filled the room like a storm pressing against glass. I am King Adrian Dragomir, he said. And you have stepped onto sacred ground. The men stumbled back. The vampire, one whispered. The night answered its ruler. The door slammed shut on its own. Wind howled through cracks that hadn't existed moments before. The men screamed as darkness coiled around them, lifting them from the floor like toys. Adrian didn't touch them. He didn't need to. Remember this, he said coldly. Mercy was offered. When the shadows released them, they fled, half mad with terror, vanishing into the snow. Silence returned. Elena slid down against the wall, shaking. Her world had shattered in minutes. Monsters were real. Kings ruled the night. And she had invited one into her home. Adrian turned to her slowly, power receding, eyes dimming back to silver gray. You should fear me, he said. Elena laughed once, breathless and broken. I should, she agreed. But you saved my house. And you saved my life, he replied. A long moment passed. Finally she asked the question that mattered. What happens now? Adrian looked at her with something dangerously close to respect. Now, he said, they know where you live. Her blood ran cold. I will not allow harm to come to you, he continued. But staying near me will paint a target on your back. Elena stood slowly, meeting his gaze. I've been a target my whole life. That answer surprised him. Outside, far beyond the forest, something ancient shifted, drawn by a human who had stood her ground before a king of the night. Elena did not sleep that night. Even after the fire steadied and the forest fell quiet again, her body refused rest. Every shadow felt alive. Every sound carried meaning. She sat at the table with her hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold, watching Adrian from the corner of her eye as he stood near the window, listening to things she could not hear. You should leave at first light, she said finally. Adrian turned slowly. And abandon you? You didn't come here for me, Elena replied. You came because you were running. And you let me in, he said. That makes you my responsibility. The word made her flinch. I don't need protection. No, Adrian said quietly, stepping closer. You've survived without it. That doesn't mean you deserve to. His words landed heavier than any threat. No one had ever said that to her before. By morning, the snow had eased but not enough to free the road. Adrian tested the path and returned, expression grim. We're still trapped. Another day at least. Elena nodded, oddly relieved. Fear sat in her chest, but beneath it stirred something unfamiliar, curiosity. She watched him move through her small home with careful respect, never touching what wasn't offered, never taking space that wasn't given. For a king, he asked permission far more than he commanded. As the day passed, she noticed other things. He never ate the food she prepared unless she insisted. He avoided mirrors. When sunlight brushed his skin through the window, he didn't burn, but he did turn away, jaw tightening as if enduring something painful. You don't drink anything, she said at last. Adrian's eyes lifted to hers. Not what you're thinking. Then what? She asked. Control, he answered. Hunger mastered, not indulged. That frightened her more than fangs would have. In the afternoon, they heard shouting from far down the valley. Human voices. Villagers. Elena's face drained of color. They found me. Adrian moved instantly, placing himself between her and the door. Stay behind me. The knock that followed was not violent, but it carried judgment. Elena Vasile, a man called. We know you're in there. Her chest tightened. Memories surged, torches, accusations, her mother crying. She stepped forward despite Adrian's hand tightening on her arm. I won't hide, she said. I never did anything wrong. She opened the door. 3 villagers stood outside, armed with suspicion more than weapons. Their eyes slid past her, straight to Adrian. The fear was immediate. Who is he? One demanded. A guest, Elena said firmly. Adrian inclined his head politely, though his presence made the air feel heavier. I mean no harm. The villagers didn't believe him. They never did believe what didn't fit their fears. Step aside, Elena, another said. We warned you what would happen if you kept secrets. Adrian's voice dropped. You will leave. One man laughed nervously. And who are you two? Adrian met his gaze. The man fell to his knees. I am the reason your ancestors whispered prayers at night, Adrian said calmly. And she is under my protection. Silence shattered the valley. The villagers fled without another word. Elena stood frozen, shame and anger burning together. You didn't have to scare them. They would have burned your house, Adrian said. Or you. Tears welled in her eyes. Why does everyone think fear is the answer? Adrian looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, something like regret crossed his immortal face. Because fear built my world, he said. And you don't belong in it. Outside, the clouds parted briefly, moonlight spilling over the snow like a warning. Protection had a price. And Elena was beginning to understand that kindness could change a king, but it could also start a war. The road cleared 3 days later. Snow retreated reluctantly, as if the mountains themselves were hesitant to let go of what had been set in motion. Elena stood outside her house for the first time since the villagers fled, watching Adrian prepare to leave. The forest felt different now, no longer just a shelter but a threshold. You'll be safer once I'm gone, Adrian said, though his voice lacked conviction. Elena folded her arms against the cold. Safer doesn't always mean better. He looked at her then, really looked, as if committing every detail to memory. They will come again. Not villagers. Not hunters. Pause. My enemies. And you? She asked. What happens to you? Adrian's expression hardened into something kingly, something heavy. I return to the night. To rule it. To finish what I ran from. Elena nodded slowly. She had lived her life running, from blame, from cruelty, from people. She understood that weight. You didn't run, she said. You protected yourself. And you, he replied softly, protected me when you had no reason to. They stood in silence until the wind carried distant sounds. Horses. Too many. Too fast. Adrian stiffened. They've tracked me. Elena's heart dropped. Then go. Now. He didn't move. Instead, he turned to her, reaching into his coat and pulling free a ring, simple, dark metal etched with symbols that seemed to shift when she looked too closely. This marks my protection, he said. Anyone who harms you answers to me. She stared at it. I don't want power. It's not power, Adrian said. It's recognition. The riders burst from the treeline, armed, armored, and fearless. Not human. Not fully vampire either. Mercenaries of the night. Adrian stepped forward. Elena grabbed his sleeve. You can't fight them alone. I won't, he said, and to her shock he stepped back instead. Stay behind me, she said. The leader laughed when he saw her. A woman? Is that what made the king weak? Elena's hands shook, but she stood. No, she said clearly. What made him strong? The night responded. The forest groaned. Shadows bent. The ring in her hand burned warm, not with hunger but resolve. Adrian watched in stunned silence as the mercenaries hesitated, sensing something they couldn't name. She chose, one whispered. Adrian moved then, not as a monster but as a king defending his equal. The battle was swift, controlled, final. No unnecessary blood. No cruelty. When it was over, the forest was quiet again. Adrian turned to Elena, awe unmistakable in his eyes. You didn't bow, he said. You stood. She exhaled shakily. I've been blamed, hunted, and abandoned. I won't be small anymore. He lowered his head, to her. Not submission. Respect. I won't ask you to follow me, Adrian said. Your life is yours. Elena looked at the house she'd built from loneliness, then at the road leading back to a world she no longer feared. Then don't ask, she said. Ask me to walk beside you. For the first time in centuries, the Vampire King smiled without darkness. When the door of the cottage closed behind them, it didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like a beginning.